Hello and welcome to another video. For this one, I'm actually really nervous about doing it, and that's because it's about a place I love going to, and that is the Lake District. And I know there's a lot of people out there that know so much about the Lake District and the fells and the mountains like Scarfield Pike that I don't want to come across a little bit stupid in what I say, my terminology of it. So we used to do a bit of mountain climbing, hill climbing years ago, me and my wife. We've been up there and done all that, but things move on, and we haven't done it for quite a few years, but we've driven up there and driven up the Hard Nut Pass. And I know there's some videos out there that briefly touch upon the subject I'm going to speak about, but not the two particular stories that I'm going to relate to you today. So anyway, yeah, this is the haunted camping trips of the Lake District. Okay, so let's get started. What you'll notice, I will be looking over here to reference these locations on a map, because I want to try and be this accurate. I told you I was a bit nervous about doing it, and I want to make sure I get these places in the right order. I've listed them down, but let's see how we get on. So we are going back to 1974, first of all, and this is with Henry Derbyshire. Now, Henry had been quite often walker in the Lake District, and he was never really put off by anything. You know, he would take on most challenges, and he'd often go for a solo walk. And to be truthful, that's what Henry actually preferred, was to go out onto the fells as a solo walk. It would help him get his head together. He had quite a busy lifestyle. They didn't live far away. He actually lived over in Kendal, but he was sort of quite a busy person, and this was just a way for him to relax. And I know one thing, that when you go walking in the Lake District, it's not relaxing. So yeah, I'm not, well, we were quite fit back then, go for walks like me and my wife. So we haven't been walking up there for like 10 years since, God, longer than that, 20 years. No, we've been up there recently. We did drive up there and do a bit of driving, but a good 20 years since we've done some proper walking in Lake District. And, it's somewhere I do love. But Henry used to go there quite a lot. Now, the one we are looking at today for him was just it was just a short little exercise. He came out for Ambleside and drove down towards Dungeon Gill. Now, Dungeon Gill is actually a walk that I have done. Me and my wife went up there. We didn't have no proper walking gear at the time, and we got caught out, and we learned our lesson and went off and bought loads of expensive hiking stuff after that. But Henry started off at Dungeon Gill Hotel. He parked the car up there, and then he started walking up the first level of the walk that takes you to Stickle Tarn. Now, this is where I got to, Stickle Tarn, and yeah, it's a lovely, well, if you don't know what Tarn are, they're like bodies of water at the top of, in between fells and hills and that sort of stuff. So again, he'd walked up there, and not unusual, this was sort of like early October, there was no one about. And that's one of the beautiful things about Lake District. You can often go on these walks where you'll see no one. For the whole trip, you'll see no one. But Henry got to Stickle Tarn and just spent a little bit of time around there, sitting around the lake. He walked around the tarn and headed up towards House and Stickle. When he got to House and Stickle, he stood there and was just looking out the view. He could hear someone approaching him from behind, and he thought this was quite unusual, because he looked behind him all the way through that morning and he'd seen no one around at all. But yes, gradually he could work out this figure of this man walking up the side of the tarn and heading towards him. He thought he'd actually hang around and wait and have a chat with the gentleman. The gentleman approached him, and he said he was in about his late 50s, and he said his name was Vincent, and like Henry, he'd just come out for a gentle walk and gentle stroll. They sat down, and Vincent brought off his bag, which was a wooden box, and he opened up the wooden box, and it had all picnic food in there. And this was I guess now you'd think that'd be a bit weird, but back in 1974, this is what was a done thing. If it wasn't a great big hike or anything like that, you'd put these little wooden boxes on your back and hike up and have a lunch. Maybe a bit unusual if you're doing it on your own, But apparently this little picnic basket had enough food in there for Henry and Vince to sit down and share. And I'm just realising if I don't put loads of photos of maps in this video, you are not going to have an idea of anything I'm talking about. So I'm going to do quite a lot of screen captures of these places so you get an idea of the landscape and what we're looking at. I'm guessing a lot of you have been up Lake District and done a bit of fell walking anyway, but so after about 20-25 minutes, Henry decided that he was going to make his way off. Now he was actually heading off to Pike O'Stickle, which was just I think it's only about 400-500 yards, maybe a bit longer, over the other side of the fell. And Vincent said he was actually going to be heading back. So after they've saying their goodbyes, they parted their ways and Henry headed off over to Pike O'Stickle. And I hope I'm saying these names right, and if they're not, then but I'm going by the story that I have in front of me, and I found a few of them on the map, not all of them. I found a few of them. So Henry had made his way over to Pike O'Stickle. Again, he stood there. Now Henry did like his photography, and he had a old-fashioned, well, I guess we call them old-fashioned. They're not the old box cameras, and I mean we still use them now for wedding photography. So he brought out his box camera and he was taking some photos of Scarfell Pike in the distance. As he was taking the photos, he noticed a figure walking up from Stake Pass. Now this is to the right of him, and he worked out very, very quickly that this was Vincent. But there's no way Vincent could have been from the Tarn, got round and over to Stake Pass and walked back towards him. It's impossible. Looking at the map now, no, I can't see any way he could have done that. By the time that he would have just gone over to from House and Stickle to Pike O'Stickle, there's no way that this guy would have been able to get round and cut back to come up Stake Pass. So Henry's sitting there scratching his head thinking, how did Vincent do this? Gradually, Vincent walks up to him with a big beaming smile. Hello again, nice to see you again. And he's like, I've only just left you down there, now you're coming up here. You mean, no. He goes up, that was ages ago. He goes, I've just gone for a little stroll and come back up and bumped into you again here. And Henry's thinking, there's something not right here. There's absolutely something not right. He goes, well, I'm only heading back now. I'm going to start making my way back now to Dungeon Gill. He goes, I'm going to go down Loft Crag Way. It's going to be a nice walk. You know, it's a little bit steeper, but, you know, it keeps the blood flowing. And Vincent was like, oh, that's nice for you. That's nice for you. He goes, I'm going to go back to the Tarn. And Henry was like, yeah, good for you. He could not work it out, and he was becoming very untrusting of Vincent already. He couldn't work out how this person had done that. You know where this is going. You can get a feel for this already. Henry started walking down to Loft Crag, and yes, just as Henry thought, as he got there, he could see Vincent there already. And he looked back, and he's like, this guy's magic, or something like that. He goes, this is freaking me out. Henry walks up to him and goes, come mate, what's going on? And Vincent went, nothing my friend. He brought his picnic basket out and he told him, have some food. He kept repeating himself. And Henry's like, are you okay? There's something wrong? Is there something wrong? And Vincent went, no. He goes, but we've got to make sure you're okay. Henry started getting a little bit more concerned by this. He goes, what do you mean? You got to make sure I'm okay. He goes, we're just going to get you back safe. He goes, I'm absolutely fine, mate. I'm absolutely fine. He said, well, okay. Well, I'll follow you back down. We'll make sure you get back. Now, Henry is really sort of getting confused and getting a little bit angry. He said the frustration was getting to him. He says, I felt this gentleman had nothing but good intentions. It did seem very, very strange that he was able to get from one location to another before I could even put 2 steps in front of another. Then he was getting concerned about my welfare, and I started getting quite concerned myself. I started thinking I was having some kind of breakdown. So obviously Henry was getting a little bit stressed over this. As I come down towards Dungeon Gill, and they've come down the deeper left-hand side of it, he could see what he could work out at distance at the hotel was emergency vehicles, an ambulance. And Vincent goes, quick, we better hurry up. And they picked up their speed a little bit. Henry blacked out. When he woke up, he was in the ambulance. What turns out, and we only have Henry's word for this and Vincent's word for this, Henry had got to Stickle Tarn, had a heart attack. Vincent found him up there and brought him back to life, and Vincent was trying to drag him down the tarn and got him back down to Dungeon Gill by dragging him down there by his legs and saved his life. All the stuff Henry had happened to him, walking along up to the other tarns and taking the photos, never happened. Just never happened. Vincent and Henry went on to be friends after that. You know, he saved his life. But what Henry can't work out, he had never met Vincent before in his life, ever. Yet, when he was laying there in the back of the ambulance and he looked over, he see Vincent standing at the ambulance doors. He knew that was Vincent. Now, there is this thing that maybe delusion was coming into play for he was coming in and out of consciousness, and he was telling that his name was Vincent and he'll be alright and look after him. But all the memories that Henry had of walking between these tarns and seeing some of the sights he'd never seen before, he can't make up. Those visions he can't make up. Especially when he was standing there taking the photos of Scarfell Pike, photos that never appeared on his camera. He was looking over and see Vincent walking up from the distance. He thinks he can't imagine that. But that is what he thinks happened. It's quite a little strange one to start off with. May have some explanation there. We don't have an explanation for this next one because it is freaking creepy. So over the years, if you look into the Lake District, you'll find that there are so many ghost stories, from Ambleside, Windermere, the Roman army that appears in the mist in June over by Keswick. So we've got some quite well recorded ghost stories of that area, especially even like Ullswater, Coniston. Apparently, even the ghosts of Donald Campbell can be seen walking along the water's edge of Coniston. Donald Campbell lost his life there. And the story about Donald Campbell, I've always wanted to be able to track down and tell, right? So, Donald Campbell, his dad was Sir Malcolm Campbell. Now, Malcolm Campbell was also a world speed record holder on land. I think he may have done it on water as well. But Donald Campbell followed in the footsteps of his dad. Now, his dad got killed in a crash, and unfortunately, so would Donald Campbell go on. I believe, and I can't remember the track this was on, Donald Campbell was driving around the racing track, and he was just about to lose control of a high-speed bend when he had visions of his dad's hands coming onto the steering wheel and controlling his car around the bend. Now, Donald Campbell got out of that car and retold this story about his dad's hands appearing in the cockpit of the car and saving his life. I can't find that. I know I've read this. I can't find it where I've read it. I've looked on the internet. I've looked in old books I've got. I can't find it. I know I have read this. If you've heard that one, let me know. But yes, unfortunately, Donald Campbell lost his life on Lake Coniston, and when they did find Bluebird, they pulled the car up and they managed to recover his body, and he's now buried in the church at Coniston as well. But apart from that, most of the stories around the Lake District is to do with mist. As I say, like the Roman army appearing in the myths over at Keswick. This one does include mist, and it is a creepy one, and I guess lessons could have been learned before this, because these were two experienced hill walkers that got themselves into trouble, and not that they suffered the consequences, but they certainly didn't have a very enjoyable experience on this camping trip. So in 2012, Michael Coughlin and Phil, now I've got two names for Phil, so Phil Champion or Phil Chaplin, so can't quite get that correct, and Michael's dog Barney. They are staying in Grasmere. They are Welsh and they've come over from Wales to walk from Grasmere over to Buttermere. It's going to be an overnight stay. They're going to walk up to Scarfell and then walk back down to Buttermere. I've never done that. That sounds quite a big walk for me. You'll know in the comments if you've done this. I have researched this a little bit. Looking on YouTube, I actually see there's another guy on there that does this with a dog as well. The dog's called Blue. My God, fantastic. What a lovely dog as well. It's, yeah, he goes up there and his dog follows him and they goes over. Fascinating how dogs can just do this landscape with like a blink in the eye. Incredible. Now, Michael and Barry did check the weather. They understood that it was all going to be lovely. It's going to be a nice sunny day. It's October. A lot of people go walking in October in Lake District because the scenery is beautiful up there. And they knew that there was a risk of some low cloud kicking in round about 8 o'clock. But they'd worked out that there could be hours before they'll be able to get to where they want to get, set up a camp overnight, and then get up in the morning and finish their trip. They thought everything was planned, nothing could go wrong. They covered for all eventualities. Now, what they didn't do, they are what you'd now call, I guess, extreme campers now. So they weren't ones that went with all the full-size tents and everything. They went with the bare minimum they thought that they were going to need to survive that evening, and that was it. Now, they took all the stuff they had. They had like little propane tanks to do. This is 2012. Camping equipment is, it's a little bit more advanced today, but it was still pretty good. I know I was camping in 2000 and we were using stuff and it was perfect then. So yes, I guess technology had come on, but it didn't account for what was going to happen to them, and it is pretty creepy. Looking back on it now, they think the warning signs were there right at the beginning of their walk. They left Grasmere and they were heading to High Rise. Now that's about 3.5 mile hike, and it normally would be a bit of a breeze. But as they started, they felt as if they was almost like treading water. It was a lovely day, but each footstep just didn't seem as if they was getting as far as they thought. They left at 10 o'clock and they were only expecting to be there a couple of hours to get to High Rise, but it seemed to have taken forever. And they were looking at each other and they're saying, is the dog holding us up? But Barney, it was always running off, and Barney was sitting up there waiting for them quite a lot of the time. And they thought, well, maybe it's us. Perhaps they were a bit cramped up and they had a bit of a journey over and they'd been lazing around for a couple of days in Grasmere, just chilling out before they'd gone for this walk. So maybe they just thought it was their fitness and they needed to put the step up a little bit. Ironically, they got to the top of Stickle Tarn. Now this is one from the same place from the last story where you can come up from Dungeon Gill. They were looking down on Stickle Tarn, and I hope that shows up in this video. This ain't just pop into the corner about here. It felt as if someone almost put their finger over the camera. That freaked me out. Sitting there telling ghost stories and that happens. I have to look back on that because maybe that was my imagination, I don't know. But where we get to? Right. So they were looking down on Stickle Tarn. Around this time, they noticed that already the clouds started to roll in, and that wasn't what was predicted. Now, I am very aware that the weather in the Lake District can change in a blink of an eye, and it's always worth double checking before you start your walk at the gate. Check the latest weather information now. It's very well kept up, and if there's any warnings coming out, they're updated very, very quickly. Nowadays, you can get them straight onto your mobile phone. But yeah, the Ranger service up there do a fantastic job in keeping that weather stuff up to date. But they're only at the Tarn, and they were still sort of about 1.5 miles away from High Rise. But they carried on, they pushed on. They're going to stay a little bit further up, but they're also very much aware as you get near Scarfell Pike, the ground becomes very, very rocky, and it's not a very comfortable place to find a little spot to spend the night, really. So they headed off. They pushed up to High Rise. As they was getting up to High Rise, the cloud base got lower and lower and lower. Soon they found themselves walking in a very light mist. This is only 3 miles now away from where they started off, and we're only a couple of hours into their walk, and already things were feeling a little bit daunting. As they stood at High Rise and the cloud base was getting lower, they made the choice to change their route a little bit. They were going to go from where they were planning and go to Esk Pike. Now this would mean cutting across a bit of a downward trend. Hopefully that was going to bring below the cloud base, and they'll be able to pick up the Stake Pass and bring it up to the Angel Tarn where they were planning to camp for the evening. The fog did clear as they went down. I say fog, it's low cloud, isn't it? So as they dipped down from High Rise, the cloud base did rise a little bit. They ducked under it and it did clear up. This is around the time that Barney, the dog, started not playing up, but getting a little bit agitated. He kept stopping, looking behind, as if he was hearing a noise. Now, it's not unusual for dogs to act like that across the fells. There are sort of like wild birds up there and lots of other stuff that can trigger a dog to act quite weird. But for Barney, this was slightly out of character. Michael and Phil had done a lot of walking in Wales, and the dog had never really noticed anything like that, and it was very obedient, and it stopped when it needed to stop. On a few times between High Rise and Esk Pike, Barney ran off into the distance, and they're calling for him and he wasn't coming back. And they would catch up, and Barney would be standing dead still with his tail pointed and just staring to where they were heading. And that gave Michael a bit of the creeps. He was like, oh, I don't like this, don't know why he's doing that. As they started heading up towards Angel Tarn, the clouds started getting heavier and heavier. So much so they could only see about 20 to 30 feet in front of them. Now that's not normally much of an issue, but when you're walking on a fell, it is a bit of a problem. Again, they are experienced walkers, so it wasn't a massive concern. It was just something they were aware of that they've got to keep their eye on. This is where they started hearing as if someone was coming up behind them. They could hear footsteps on the gravel track, and so they just picked up the Stake Pass. They stood there for a while waiting for these footsteps to catch up with them, but the sound density of them never changed. Phil believed that this was probably just 2 walkers coming down from the Stake Pass and cutting through and probably heading down towards Dungeon Gill. But Michael wasn't too sure. He didn't quite agree with the direction the footsteps were coming from. And in fog and mist, it is hard to tell sort of directions. The sound sort of like echoes around you. Barney, on the other hand, was really starting to freak out. He started barking, something that he would never ever do, and just started strange behaviour. So what they decided to do, Michael and Phil decided that they would head towards as close as they could get to Angel Tarn and set up a camp. Now the fog was getting, the fog cloud, I'm going to say fog, you know it's mist, the clouds come down and it's all the same thing. The mist come down very, very, I just said that and I said mist, didn't I? The cloud base come down very, very quickly and cut off nearly all their vision. Now when I say all their vision, it was literally down to about 10 feet, which is, that is almost like putting your hand out and not seeing where you, it's not, is it, 10 feet? You know what I mean? I'm not exaggerating. It was getting very, very dense. They started panicking, thinking, we're not going to get to where we want to be, but they kept their heads down and they followed the track very, very carefully till they worked out they were probably around about 50 to 60 metres away from where the tarn would be. But they literally could not see this, But luckily they got it right. They headed down and they could see the banks of the tarn. The problem being is around the banks of the tarn was really, really rocky. So they actually backtracked just a little bit to where there was a grass area where they felt comfortable to put their tent up for the night. Now when I say a tent, these were more like tarpaulin type of tents. Again, the weather was not meant to be like this. They knew there was a risk of cloud, but the temperature had really started to drop. At this point, they hadn't decided if that was going to be calling it for that day's walking. It was still quite early on, even though they're taking their time, and you've travelled around about 6 miles to where they had been right now. It's only come up to about 4 o'clock. Now, 4 o'clock in October, you've only got a couple of hours left of light, if you're lucky. I know being up the north, you get light a little bit longer, but that is what they felt, that no, it would be probably best to get the camp ready, sit down, have some food. That is when they started hearing some strange noises. We'd already heard of the footsteps. Barney kept standing up and facing out to where the mist was. I'm going to put it to you how it was explained to me. That as it got dark, the upper level of the cloud was lighter. Now, I'm guessing, as it got dark, the moon was out. That's lighting up the top level of the cloud. If the cloud isn't as maybe dense there, but it's going to let some light through. So they said that the cloud around them was a bit of a glow. Now that sounds eerie. I've never really been in a situation like that, apart from when it's a street light doing it. I don't know if that is a natural thing to happen when you're up on these fells, that the fog can look a little bit glowy. But I was sitting around and they'd got their little lean-to tents up, and they'd heated up some water, and I was having tea and coffee, and they'd done some food. When Barney started barking, he was looking out over to heading towards where Scarfell Pike was. As I say, you couldn't see nothing. It was still thick cloud. Michael got up, walks over to Barney, and Barney is rigid. He's just standing there facing out, not moving. Michael's looking out and he can hear footsteps in the distance. But then there's a ruffle and there's a footstep closer to him. He turns around and says to Phil, there's someone around us. Phil gets up and he's standing there, and Phil hears a set of footsteps behind him. And he's looking around, and between them, they said they feel as if they've been encircled by people around their little campsite. Barney is standing there rigid, still facing in one direction. As Phil is looking over to where Barney is, and he can see the back of Michael, he can see a dark shape appearing in the fog that was right between them. He shouts out to Michael, there's someone in front of you. Michael lurches forward to see if he can grab whoever is there, and as he does so, he goes out the sight of Phil. So the fog or cloud is so thick at this point, even those few steps, Phil was losing sight of Michael. Michael comes back and said there's nothing there. Then they start hearing like a whistling sound, and the whistling sound says to encircle the whole campsite. It's getting louder and louder. Not so loud that Michael said he didn't feel like he wanted to put his hands on his ears and protect himself. Phil said it didn't sound like the sound of the wind. It was just a very high frequency whistle that was just going round and round. When I was told this, what I imagined, when I was a kid, you used to have this little whistle on a string that you could swing round, that sort of noise as it go round. I can't whistle. No, I can't whistle. Don't know why. Never really been out there. You used to be able to do something called a bellows whistle. There was my dad's call when you used to be out playing. Well, I can't whistle. Terrible. My wife could whistle better than me. That's embarrassing, isn't it? But anyway, words out, I can't whistle. So yeah, I'd be useless getting trapped out. I wouldn't be able to call for no one, would I? So anyway, getting back to it, they're standing out, frozen. They literally are petrified. Phil said this is the most concerned he's ever been up on a campsite, which is, coming from Wales and all the myths and legends you got over in Wales, this is probably saying something. What happened next is they both say it's really hard for them to understand, believe, to trust their own thoughts and their own memories. But he said there's no other way of putting it. He's just got to tell you it how it happened and let you make up your own mind. Phil, Michael and Barney all standing together, facing towards Scarfell Pike. They can't see nothing. It's thick cloud, mist, fog, whatever you want to call it, in front of them. The mist in cloud is glowing. He said it's bright. It's not supernatural glowing. It's just very white. In that whiteness, they start seeing figures. And when I say figures, they said they can't make any detail out of them. They can tell that they are human. They're human size. They're not aliens or nothing like that. And they are standing around the whole camp area. He said there's around about 8 or 9 of them. And they're moving about. They can hear their feet on the ground. But they never come forward enough to fully be visual inspected by Phil and Michael. Barney is turning around on the spot, looking at these people, growling all the time. They can hear whispering from these people. These people are communicating with each other, whispering, saying stuff. And as they'd be doing that, they would move away and come back. And it made it even feel even more creepier that sometimes you'd see one person there. Other times it'd be like 6 people there. And they're turning around, they're spinning around on the spot, trying to see. Phil shouting out, "Who are you? Who are you?" Michael is getting out his hunting knife. So he feels that they're going to be attacked. You've got the dog turning around as if it's chasing his tail, growling at all these figures around them. Then the whistling started, and the whistling started getting louder and louder. And then nothing. All the vision stopped. There was a dead quiet. Barney relaxed and literally laid down on the floor and put his head between his paws. Michael and Phil were standing there almost catatonic, didn't know what they'd just experienced. They knew they had no other option. They had to stay there that night. They couldn't move away from there. The fog was still very, very dense. The cloud base hadn't gone up. It was still quite bright. This must have been the moonlight lighting up the fog. They didn't know what to do. They was literally petrified. They didn't know if they was about to be attacked. I don't know if these people were real. But they decided the best thing to do was to barricade themselves in as best they could in their little lean-to canopy tents and sit there with the dog and wait the night out. One of the mistakes they did make, all the while I was doing this, they'd left their camp stove on and it actually gone through nearly all their gas. It did mean they had hardly any hot water. And I know if you've ever been up to the Lake District, you don't find many bits of wood up on top of those fells. No, it's mainly lumps of volcanic rock up on by Scarfell Pike and all that. So it's very hard to find anything to burn. If you don't bring with you, it's a national park. I don't think you can have a campfire up there anyway. But in an emergency, you try something. But they had no real source now of heat. So after a couple of hours of sitting outside their tent, they decided that they're going to get in there. They're going to pull their canopies they've got together to make it as secure as they could do. Put their rucksacks along the edge of it and get Barney, who generally would like to sleep outside, get Barney to sleep in there with them. They didn't really plan on getting much sleep that night, and as it turned out, they didn't really get much sleep that night. They were lying there, and it got to about 1 o'clock when Barney stood up. First of all, Michael thought that Barney needed to go away, and Barney started growling. Phil's looking at Mike going, "What's happening now?" They pulled back the sheet at the front of their tent, and right in front of them, they see a figure, a tall figure. Now, Phil, this is where Michael and Phil disagree in what they see. Phil reckons he see a Roman soldier. That is plausible, only because there's been reports of Roman soldiers around that area. Now, you've got the Hard Knot Pass. The Hard Knot Pass isn't far from there. and it's probably one of the most dangerous roads to drive along in the country. And I'll stick some filming through this video. I'm going to try and put some filming in that I've done in Lake District in the past. You get a feel of it from my view of it. But the Hard Knot Pass, you've got a Roman fort on it. Now, I know that is below Scafell, but it shows that these Roman people were up there. I know Phil had knowledge of the Romans up there anyway. You know, we're British, we know the Romans were everywhere. You know, you're not far from Adrian's Wall, are you, really? So we all know the Romans had a place around there. So, yeah, you got the Roman fort. Now, Michael, he said that the person he sees standing there was more Neanderthal, not really a modern human, which is really bizarre that they're both looking at the same thing, but both interpreted it differently. Both describe it as a very tall figure. Barney, on the other hand, he don't care. He's just standing there growling and barking at this figure they can see. As they're staring at this figure, two more figures join him by the side. Again, Phil describes them as he looks like Roman soldiers to him. He even says that he thinks one of them had a shield, where Michael, he said that he thinks the one that joined him on the side was actually a child. How you got two people looking at the same thing and not agreeing? This goes against everything that you'll find in paranormal stuff, because normally when two people see something and they relay that, even on the drive home, their memories will merge into one. That's just how human brains work. You start going over it and you think, maybe I didn't see that, maybe I see that. But both stick to their story. They both stick that they both see something different standing outside that tent. One, Michael says it was a child with looks like a Neanderthal. Phil says it was a Roman soldiers, one with a shield. You know, for me, I like things that add a little bit of credibility, and them disagreeing on what they actually see, for me, adds a little bit of credibility that something weird was going on. Again, the whistling started. It's going round and round the campsite. They could hear the footsteps almost marching around their campsite. This goes back to the Roman army that is seen over by Keswick, where in June you see this army come out of the mist and march across the fells. Now, is this something to do with them? Did this army come from Hard Knot Pass, the fort there, and was marching over that way from it? Was this, I wouldn't say a time slip? You know, this isn't something where it's replaying something from the past. These were sort of interacting with Michael, Phil and Barney. They're making their presence known to them. I've watched some hiking videos on researching for this, and people often say that they feel as if they've been followed up in the Lake District, across the fells. It does have an eerie feeling, especially in the fog and the mist. Michael and Phil were standing there waiting for, they reckon, 15 minutes while these figures were moving around them, absolutely petrified. Didn't want to move. And then gradually these figures faded away. After a couple of hours, the clouds started lifting back up again. They were left about 4 o'clock in the morning with a really clear sky. And they could see for miles. And the sun come up, they got a lovely sunrise. And they were sitting there and going, what the hell was all that last night? What did we see? They can't work it out. Now, you've got two people there, they're experienced hikers, that have gone through some paranormal interaction that's left them dumbfounded. They pack up their stuff, they head back, they go up to Scafell Pike, head back down, they get into Buttermere, and they get their taxi back over to Grasmere, where their car is, and they don't communicate much. They don't know what to make of it. They sit in the B&B and going back over it. Again, they both disagree on what they see. Michael goes back to his home, tells his friends and family about his story. Phil tells his friends about the story, and yeah, it sort of ends like that. And it's not a great conclusion. This is just something that their story that they've recorded and put down onto the paranormal databases and stuff like that. I really appreciate of Michael letting me have a chat with him about this. He doesn't need to convince me that this is what he felt. Phil, I did not get to speak to Phil. Not that Phil didn't want to be a part of it. I just want to get the video out, and Phil, I'm sure he would have done this. But yeah, Michael, I know you said that you can't wait to see this video up on here. Correct me if anything I've got wrong. Comment below, and the offer still opens to you, Michael, that if you want to sit down with me and we do this together, and maybe on a live stream, I would love to do that. I'd love to do a stream with Michael, because I think this is a fascinating story, and I love it. It's I've got lots for the Lake District, and if you like these Lake District ones, or you want to know more about the Lake District ones, I mean, we even got around Hard Knot Pass, you've even got, was it gnomes under the ground or something like that, fairies? There's just so much up there. And we've got the ghost car that goes down through Hard Knot Pass. You've got lots of ghost stories around Hard Knot Pass. So I'm going to stick some videos that you may have seen through here if I can find them. But again, thank you for your support. Membership is growing. Putting that notification bell on has really helped, so my videos getting that interaction right at the beginning. And share it as much as you like. Please keep comments below. Yeah, it's been great doing the live feeds with you. I know some people miss them. I've got to find a better way of telling you when I'm going to do a live stream, but yeah. But anyway, look after yourself, and I'll see you next video. Bye.